Hello, everyone. Our overall goal is to foster inclusive economies and societies. If girls and women are missing from STEM training, not only them, but we all as society at large are losing the chance to apply their diverse talents, perspectives, and leadership to shaping a sustainable future. STEM skills are not only the future of work, they are the keys we need for unlocking a better, more inclusive future. How can businesses upskill, cross-skill and reskill workforces to create new conditions for inclusive innovation? And to answer these questions, so we have the great pleasure to welcome 4 experts that you will get to know in a few seconds, because this session will be moderated by the bright and sharp-witted Cassie Werber. She is a senior reporter for Quartz, based in London. Quartz was founded 9 years ago with the aim to help its readers discover new industries, new markets, and new ways of doing business that are more sustainable, innovative, and inclusive. Before joining Quartz, Cassie Werber was an energy reporter for the Wall Street Journal and a co-organizer of Hackers London, a monthly networking group for journalists and technologists. She studied at Cambridge University and has an MA in business and finance journalism from the City University of London and the University of Aarhus in Denmark. Please, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to communicate about this session throughout your social media using the hashtags WFGM21 and hashtag Women for Inclusion. The Women's Forum Twitter handle is @women's_forum. Dear Cassie, the floor is yours now.
Thank you so much, Natalie, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here with my 4 panelists to talk about STEM skills, so that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which, as Natalie already said, are part of the future of work. That's something we report on a lot at Quartz, and specifically Quartz, a work where I mostly write for. Our coverage is at qz.com. But I would like to now introduce my panelists quickly first, and then we'll have a bit more of a chat once I've introduced you all. So first of all, we have Calvin J. Crosslin. He's the Chief Diversity Officer at Lenovo, a big tech firm, and also the president of the Lenovo Foundation, which is overseeing Lenovo's philanthropic efforts internationally. Secondly, we have Sandrine Delage. She's head of Change Makers and Prospective at BNP Paribas. Also co-founder of the Women and Girls in Tech events with Samplon, Digital Ladies and Allies and BNP Paribas. And she's a blogger with her daughter, Noemi, for the intergenerational blog Maryfield 2.0, which I'm very much looking forward to reading after we finish this session. Thirdly, we have Mounira Jamjoom. I am going to apologize now if I say anybody's name wrong, and really please correct me if I do. Mounira is a co-founder and CEO of Aanaab.com, which is an online professional development platform for teachers. She's also the co-founder of MCAN Education, which is an education advisory company. And lastly, of our 4, we have Monika Lessl. She's the Senior Vice President of the Bayer Foundation and also the Head of Corporate R&D and Social Innovation at Bayer. Maybe, Monika, maybe we can start with you. And would you like to tell us where you're speaking to us from today?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. Actually, I'm in Basel today. Very much looking forward to have the discussion on this Women's Forum on women in STEM. And so that's a topic very close to my heart. So as you mentioned, I'm working for Bayer, and Bayer is a life science company. So technology and science is kind of our DNA, and therefore kind of supporting women to advance their careers in science and in the fields of technology is something very important to us and also to me. And I think one point that I really want to make here is, on one hand, it's about getting women excited on science and STEM, but the other part for me is bringing them in respective leadership positions. Yeah, and this is something where we are now quite strongly working on. And maybe we can discuss this also later a bit more in detail here. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'll come back many times to women in leadership, but also that first point you made about getting women and girls excited in the first place about joining these fields. And so both ends of the curve there, both the kind of the pipeline and also the getting to the highest levels of leadership. Calvin Crosslin from Lenovo, where are you speaking to us from today?
So I'm in Research Triangle Park, which is in North Carolina in the United States. Very excited to be here, so thank you very much. Also looking forward to sharing some information and talking about the things that we're doing at Lenovo internally to increase representation of women in STEM, particularly at the leadership level, and also from philanthropy, the things that we're doing around STEM in underrepresented communities where we work and live.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that. Dr. Mounira Jamjoom, am I saying your name right?
Perfect.
Fantastic. And where are you this morning? Or in fact, for me, it's the afternoon.
It's this evening for me.
Oh,
yes.
Evening. Well,
Yeah.
Spending the evening with us.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm in Dubai today with our team at Aanaab. We were presenting at the Global Education Supply Conference, which is really a global gathering for education technology companies. And what we hear today from the speakers, His Excellency and Professor Arij, and I look forward to discussing more with my colleagues today, is how we really need to be intentional about ensuring that innovation is really across the ecosystem and reaches everyone. So I look forward to discussing that with you through our work in e-learning.
Absolutely. Okay, and our final panelist for today, Sandrine Delage from BNP. Where are you today, Sandrine?
Hello everyone from Paris. I'm here because, I can explain my personal commitment, because at the beginning of my career, I began 30 years ago as a computer science manager, and I really can observe that there were fewer and fewer women. And so I'm very glad here because, the idea to join companies, to join personal, professional, and different generation in these commitments, really, I think that we can have a great impact together.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining today. I've got lots of questions, lots of talking points, and I'm sure you guys have lots of things that you would like to talk about too. So my job here is to facilitate a conversation really between the four of you. Maybe I can just start with a general question, and anybody can feel free to chip in with your examples. But I'd really love to know about any examples you have where inclusivity contributed to innovation. Would anyone like to start on that?
With me?
Absolutely, yeah, please.
All right, great. So a big part of what we do in e-learning really started with the concept of inclusivity and making knowledge accessible and innovation accessible to those that don't have access to this type of innovation. So I'll give a very concrete example from what we do at Aanaab. The vision at Aanaab was that we wanted to bring the best of the professional development that's available globally from the top tier universities and the latest research on improving teaching practice, whether in STEM subjects or in humanities, and to make that accessible to the Arab-speaking teacher. So what we do is we translate and localize and Arabize a lot of this content. We provide it online for free or for very affordable prices so that teachers can have access to this and really improve their practice. We have noticed that pre-pandemic actually and post-pandemic that a lot of the skills that teachers needed in order to communicate with the younger generation were the digital skills and in order to really speak the same language. So we found ourselves really working a lot on providing free online content on how to use digital skills to improve student learning. In our research, we really found, especially women, who have access to free Moocs around STEM and around digital skills, have reported an improvement in their self-esteem when standing to teach in front of kids in their teaching practice after having access to this type of knowledge and this type of training with different universities and different professors from around the globe. So definitely we've seen that impact on the ground. We also noticed that women have a very high appetite, at least in our region, to learn and to be lifelong learners. So interestingly, on our platform, although it's gender neutral, anyone can go and learn on Aanaab, we find that more than 70% of our learners are female teachers.
Would you just clarify, what is a Mooc for anybody who doesn't know that term?
Yeah, it's a massive open online course. So what we do is we basically create courses with universities around the globe. We Arabize and localize. We offer them for the public, free for their own learning.
So that's a great example, I think, of something we're talking about really in this whole session, which is learning throughout our professional lives, right? That's one of the key things here, because we're not just talking about who goes into this field, but how we can change people's skills, upskill and retrain. Calvin, would you like to talk about that at all at Lenovo?
Absolutely. So we were talking earlier about there's a lot of data out there around how inclusion and diversity will increase revenue, will increase innovation, will increase market share and those types of things. And so, yes, we have specific programs at Lenovo to increase representation of women in technical job families, technical fields, and particularly in leadership roles. And as we talked about earlier, the responsibility that governments have, that private sector and even academia have to change the environment and make it more accessible, I think you have to come at it from two directions. So as we work to change the organization Lenovo and make things accessible, I think we also have to offer courses for women on how to navigate barriers that we know exist, right? So we have strategic courses, one called Women's Leadership Development Program, that develops women just below the executive level to prepare them for executive level roles. And it's the same leadership course that anybody would take, except that it also adds, as I said, things around how do you navigate those barriers, sharing best practices, building a network, building sponsorship, and building mentors or having mentors. So those are some of the examples we have. A product diversity office is probably another one around innovation, where the intent is to have our products go through accessibility experts. And while that's designed for people with disabilities, there's a lot of technology that comes out of that product diversity office that serves a broader audience.
That's a great example as well. I wonder if anybody else might talk about some of the barriers as well. So not just the ways in which you at your companies or institutions are helping women, but also some of the things that they're running up against.
Yeah, so maybe I can, on one hand, give an example, but then also say a bit about challenges. Yeah, yes. One key element, of course, is now how can you integrate better data science into the whole research and development organization. And this means also to bring together, on one hand, scientists, but also together with data scientists. And so we designed a program we called it Tech Immersion Program, which was really around concrete challenges. Yeah, so how can you use AI, for example, to make a digital recruitment for clinical trials or along the entire R&D process? And then brought this team together, work on this challenge. But on the work, they were kind of learning from each other. And I think this is one of the barriers, is we talk different languages. Yeah. So if a data scientist has his own set of language and a normal scientist has his own set of language, and then people from marketing and other areas have another set of languages. So I think it's very important to learn from each other. And this is also a type of diversity, is for me across organizations or across disciplines, then of course different nationalities. But I think it's women and men, of course, gender is a key element, but it's not enough. So we also need to work across disciplines. And this was a great example where we could come out with a lot of very good projects, which have also been implemented in the meantime. But we considerably looked at the kind of composition of the teams, of having the different aspects of diversity, and it really proved to be quite successful. And it was great collaboration also with MIT and other partners.
Did you find then, Monika, that you simply bringing together those more diverse teams helped people get over those kind of language barriers, or did you have to do more to help people understand one another?
Yeah, I think by working together on this topic, they kind of had to educate each other in order to learn what does it really mean. Yeah, and I mean, we have also seen these barriers of language. I mean, I'm from industry. I've worked a lot with academia. There again, I mean, you have these language barriers. Yeah, but what often helps is that you work on a concrete topic together. Yeah, so you may not explain each other this just out of the air, but if you work on a concrete challenge, then by doing so and bringing these diverse teams together, so you learn from each other. Yeah.
Sandrine, how do you go about kind of convincing people that this area is for them, that this area, the STEM area, or this more technical areas are for everyone?
Yes, we have two levels. First, I want to share with you, but I think that it's very important to have quantified engagement about the number of women we want to hire and we want to have in our IT departments. That's why BNP Paribas really is engaged and has announced 1,000 more women in IT fields. And this objective to succeed is not easy. It's very ambitious. So we have to recruit in external, but also in internal. And we have an internal training platform, which its name is Data Digital Agile Academy, and it's linked with the partnership of Open Classroom. Perhaps you may know this online platform, which is not elitist, and that's why I want to focus on. It's, you know, we must get rid of the geek role model, this male, you know, young, addict to technology, very brilliant, perhaps with a high degrees, and really at BNP Paribas you can join training even if you don't have initial technical skills, because you can capitalize on your skills. And so STEM profession, it's not only IT, you know, skills. You can have literature background, you can have arts or human studies. And I can give an example of, for example, the UX designer, user experience designer. It's a great job, and it's just about interaction between human beings and machines. And usually we need psychology studies, and really technology or STEM skills are an additional skill. But that's the point. And after, to share that, so you can see my screen. We have created Women and Girls in Tech intergenerational events, because I think it's very powerful. I have experienced this, you know, by learning in duo with two generations, it's easier to be confident, to discover the different jobs, and to start going to these jobs, this training. So I think that events, just like, you know, Women's Forum events, it's a proof in itself that events are moments, emotional moments, where you can really make a change. And at Vivatech, we did an extra event with 90 actors, schools, associations, and companies, with 60 round tables, in a very, you know, joy moments, fun moments, and you can discover, you know, this wonderful woman in tech as Ada Lovelace or Eddie Lama or Aurélie Jean. And I think it's these key moments that helps to give, you know, all the place for the woman in tech.
Speaking of key moments, we've been through a pretty intense moment, lasting moment of the pandemic over the past 2 years. That has been a corner around which a lot of companies have turned and a lot of changes have happened, not all of them positive. But I wonder if I could ask you whether you've seen any acceleration of diversity efforts or changes to the workplace that might be positive as a result of the pandemic. I'm very happy for anyone to jump in there, but I can also ask you specifically.
So, I mean, I'm happy to start. I mean, we've seen, I'll talk first more broadly about what I've seen happening in the country, and then really more specifically about our workplace. So we've seen a stark contrast in job losses. You know, some sectors have really blustered, like the technology sectors, and we've seen massive job losses in other sectors like tourism, retail, construction, etc., which really affected different groups and a lot of women as well. And we've also seen like a double disruption. So the pandemic plus all the automation that was already happening pre-pandemic, and just simply, you know, became much more apparent post-pandemic. So again, a lot of, you know, women jobs were lost and were affected globally, and I'm sure in every country. However, there is a silver lining in all of this. We've noticed how resilient we are as workers and as teams and as communities. We were able to shift quickly. For the education sector, we were really able to shift quickly and find solutions to deal with the difficulties that were happening, to continue learning. And I think what we are discussing today is actually the beginning of the future, because we're discussing learning design. How can learning be accessible to everyone and anyone, and really fair and equitable? And we redesign learning in a way that is more accessible to everyone. And I find that very exciting post-pandemic. This is what we're trying to do at work through Aanaab, and what I really see happening across the globe and in my country as well.
And Calvin, I think you've also thought quite a lot about the return to the office, the possible return to the office, and the possibilities of hybrid work in the future. How do you see that affecting this specific problem or opportunity?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time in being very, very thoughtful about a hybrid model. You know, the technology we use, this laptop that I'm on right here today, is the same one that I put in my backpack and I go to work and use, and it's the same one I bring here and work from home or on vacation or whenever I might need it. So that has really expanded our ability to have employees, you know, work from wherever they choose to work. And there is a balance point between being able to have work-life integration and flexibility by being able to being remote. And there's a balance of being in person, face-to-face, when there's time and a need to collaborate, right? And so we're working through all of those types of discussions and challenges so that we give our employees the best ability to be flexible, but also provide them an environment where if they need to collaborate face-to-face, they have the technology and the space to do so.
And has anybody else had an experience of the pandemic opening up opportunities or kind of pushing change quicker?
And maybe I can also add to this. I think that for me, as a woman and mother of 2 kids, always flexibility was very important. I think it was not so much kind of the overall workload or the ambition. It's more being a bit more flexible when to do what. And I think this is kind of, we have seen a lot of challenges for women in the pandemic, but I also see this is a very positive one, that there is much more flexibility in how you structure the day and how you can get engaged and maybe combine some of your duties with your work. And I think this is something that will remain. So we at Bayer also will have a hybrid model. And the other thing I see is that recruiting talents is also changing. So we are now recruiting talents. Of course, we did also before from across the world, but now people can also stay where they are and still have global roles or whatever. And I think this is also a huge change and a positive outcome of all the pandemic. Yeah. And finally, as a third thing, I really see that now things are ramping up. I mean, we have also quite ambitious goals to have gender parity until 2030 at all managerial levels. Yeah, so from the top to everywhere, which I think is very good. And of course, an interim goal until 2025. So I think it's all going in the right direction. Yeah, and finally, I also see that women networks are ramping up. And I mean, like here on the Women Forum, which is a fantastic example, which I think is very, very important to advance women's careers. Yeah.
And Sandrine, you mentioned in your previous answer that women, or in fact any applicants, don't necessarily have to have those sort of early years STEM training in order to apply for the kinds of roles that you're filling. How do people know that they can apply for those roles if they don't have that background? How are you getting that message out? Or how can we get that message out?
Yes, it's a great question, and it's not so obvious to answer, because we really have to connect companies, associations, governments, schools. And I think that the power is really when you link the number 5 of the Sustainable Objective Goals with the 17th objective, which is, partnership. And that's why it's very important to have, mainstream events, collective events to really invite. That's what we have made at Vivatech, young people, and really create intergenerational moments with them. But yes, we have to face, I think really you have the great question, is this topic, must be a mainstream topic. How can we touch young people everywhere? That's I think the next issue and the next challenge for the future.
We've also had a question from the audience, which is about retention of women in the workforce. So once you've encouraged people in, how do you make sure that you retain them? And I wonder if anybody has any direct experience of making changes that meant that women stayed more and didn't drop out of the workforce, for example, around childbearing years or other kind of pressure points.
Yeah, I think that's when you have to look at compensation and non-compensation factors, right? Particularly with women in leadership or executive roles tend to leave at a higher rate than others. And so I think from a compensation factor, you have to make sure people are competitively paid internally and against the market, whether that's their base or their bonus or other compensation factors. And then from the non-compensation factors, a lot of what we've talked about already on the call, right? Things like flexibility, things like career development, projects. Is the person feeling as though they are valued by the organization, their thoughts, their ideas, those types of things. So I think there's a number of things you can do from a non-compensation perspective to be more competitive and retain people. And oftentimes it's more important than even the compensation piece, but obviously that's why we all come to work, right?
And maybe I'll just throw in another follow-up question from another of our watchers and listeners. Is there a danger that with this kind of increased flexibility that we end up with a kind of two-track system where there are flexible jobs and there's flexibility, but that means that women take on more caring responsibilities at home and maybe don't progress as fast, while perhaps men or people who don't have those responsibilities take up more of the kind of chances to go into work and be visible, those sorts of things. Is that a danger? Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, I think maybe I can say a few words. I think it could be a danger. Yeah, I mean, if women consider to do everything in parallel, which is impossible. Yeah, so I think it's very important on one hand to use flexibility, but then also to be clear where you need support. And I mean, by talking about support systems, so I had the really pleasure that the company provided childcare, yeah, so which was kind of excellent to have it on site, to bring the kids and have their childcare on site. So I think this is something, a real advantage, yeah. But I also wanted to make a point what you mentioned earlier, yeah. I mean, it's also doesn't make any sense to bring women or diversity in the workplace if you don't give them a voice. Yeah. So I think then again, it's a leadership question from the other side to make sure all voices are being heard and valued. Yeah. So, and I think this is very important to keep women or all the minority groups or whatever, be it LGBTQ or whatever, making sure that the voice is being heard and that they have are part of the table, and that we take decisions or whatever together. Yeah? So I think this is very important leadership topic from my side.
Great.
We are coming to the end of the session, incredibly, but I would like to ask you all the same closing question, if I may, but I'll start with Sandrine. It's a big question, and so I don't think you'll be able to make every point that you want to, but how do we use our collective power to further a more inclusive world?
Well, I can answer with a very concrete action. You can join the collective movement Women and Girls in Tech, because it's not an association, it's not a network, it's really a collective movement to create dedicated events to help women to find their place and to you know, to help them to say, why not me? I can do it, and it's for me as well. So we can do it together, and we have, as women's forums, you know, action and collective action we can make together.
And the same question, Calvin, I'm going to come to you. How can we use our collective power for a more inclusive world?
Yeah, I think it's everyone's responsibility. So first and foremost, I'd say to get engaged, right? Share your talents. And if you are in a situation where you're working a lot and you don't have a lot of opportunity to do that, then find organizations you can partner with to financially fund that are doing great work in this space. And then, you know, kind of a final call to action for my male counterpart is be allies, right? Be allies in this space.
Monika, can I come to you with the same question? Use collective action.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think everybody should use his or her power to get there. Yeah, I mean, I'm also engaged in Women on Boards, which I think is super important, because there you have a lever to make a real change. And then the other part is also, I mean, look in everything you do. I mean, it depending on what kind of pictures, what kind of words you're using. So being there also more inclusive on an everyday basis, but then also use your power to make it happen.
And finally, Mounira, the same question to you. We've got collective power, we know we have. How can we use it to find the world that we want to see?
For us, really, and what we've been doing is using the power of trying to influence and change mindset towards a more global and inclusive view of the world. And that's really very powerful, because you just make that mindset shift and you create that visibility and the role models that are able to do that, whether with their allies or with their partner companies, or cross-border, or through global policy. Just shifting that mindset. And this is what we're really trying to do in Saudi Arabia, shifting the mindset of the youth, of the new generation, creating cross-generational conversations. I think that would be very powerful.
Okay, thank you so much to my panelists for joining me today. Monika, Lessl, Calvin Crosslin, Dr. Mounira Jamjoom and Sandrine Delage. I'm sorry we couldn't get deeper into everything because there was a lot there to talk about, but it's great to have you, and thank you so much for giving up your time.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.